That was a pretty quick hymn, so that means I got a couple more minutes, right? I've been told at 20 minutes they will cut my mic and they will sing over me. They will sing over me when we hit 20 minutes. All right. We up there, Clayton? All right. I've been asked to speak on bulletproof marriage. I guess we maybe should have gone with rock solid marriage, but that's neither here nor there. The idea is marriage is so important for our homes and so important for a Christian home. That this is something we really need to value, and I was asked to speak because of my experience with a class that we were in. It's a class that's been around for a while. It's called Dynamic Marriage, and Dynamic Marriage is an awesome course, and if you've heard of it, has anybody in here done it? I'm going off script here. Has anybody done Dynamic Marriage? I'm willing to be like, hey, I went through Dynamic Marriage. It's awesome. It will help your marriage. It will open your eyes to things you've not even thought of before. Primarily, we know that the godly marriage is important. Christ-centered marriage is super important. Christ should be at the center of our marriage. And when you make Christ the center of your marriage, you always want the best for your spouse. Your wife always wants the best for you. You're quick to forgive. You're slow to have conflict. There are so many benefits to a godly marriage. Your children see the godly marriage. And you know what? Statistics say children that come from a godly marriage, they tend to have godly marriages themselves. They tend to be imitators of their fathers and of the relationship, the way that dad treated mom. That tends to be the way that they treat their wife when they grow up someday. Now, this class, Dynamic Marriage, is offered by the Marriage Dynamic Institute. This is a nonprofit that's in Nashville. They do the training, they have some curriculum, and they do some of the organizing. If you want to teach this class, I'm going to get to the call for action at the end. You can become a facilitator in just one long weekend. It's a long weekend, and you can learn a lot of information, and you go through like a rapid fire class so that you are a facilitator. It will not make you a marriage counselor. I am not a marriage counselor. I'm not a professional, and nor will it make you a professional. But it will give you the opportunity to have to be able to purchase this curriculum and offer this class at the congregation where you may be members of. Dr. Harley is the person who actually wrote the book, His Needs, Her Needs. That's what the class is based on. Dynamic Marriage Institute has this class called Dynamic Marriage. It's based upon the book that was written. It's a little bit old now. It's a little bit dated. It's from 1986. It's been reprinted numerous times. It's sold over 2 million copies. There's a reason it's sold over 2 million copies because there's a lot of truth in there. It rings pretty true. It's not a lot of godly wisdom. It's a lot of earthly wisdom. This was a counselor that noticed these people he kept counseling. He kept having limited success. And so he talked to his counselor friends and like, do you ever get people back together? And the other counselors are like, nah, they always divorce. And he'd go to another counselor, do you guys ever get people back together? Nah, they always divorce. He was not finding success. So what he did was start asking his couples, what would it take for you to stay with your husband? Okay, sir, what would it take for you to stay with your wife? And he started noticing a commonality between the things that they were mentioning. He made a note after hundreds of couples. There was a pattern to what he noticed, and he put this together in a book, and it's very practical. First, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Love Bank model before I get into more of the things that he discussed in His Needs, Her Needs, just to kind of give you a real quick overview. Some of you are probably, raise your hand if you're familiar with the Love Bank. Have you heard this term before? Some more hands on that one. Okay, awesome. The Love Bank is really every relationship we have. It's a tangible way to think about our relationships with other people. When I do something positive for you, I earn credit in your account, in your Love Bank. You might have positive feelings from me. Maybe I helped you change your tire. I said something encouraging to you. I sent you a card. I did something nice for you. I lent you my favorite tool. Like, that's going to build a little bit of credibility in your Love Bank. You're going to have more credits. We do this with everybody. If I lose my temper at someone, but they have a lot of credibility, it knocks it down a peg, but they'll still listen to me. We're still friends. We may be, we're still brethren, that type of thing. However, you can damage these relationships, especially if you have 0 credits to begin with, right? If you meet a stranger and you just explode and lose your temper, are you ever really going to be able to build a relationship with that person again? You've made such a withdrawal from that Love Bank account that this is now impossible. So creating this affair-proof marriage, bulletproof, rock-solid marriage, means that you're always trying to add those credits to your spouse's account. So you're adding credits, and as long as you're not making withdrawals, your marriage is going to be awesome. Your marriage will be awesome in ways you hadn't even thought it could be awesome because you're just adding so many credits to her account. Let me demonstrate a little bit. It goes a little bit like this if my clicker will allow me. Okay, so when you first start dating, you have these long conversations to wee hours of the morning, right? You have phone conversations till 2 a.m. And you might earn like 200 love units with her. Okay, this is just an example. Beginning of the relationship, you have these warm fuzzies for each other, right? You stay up all night talking. You plan a romantic dinner. That's a big one. Wow. You've added to the love bank 500 units. You send flowers to her work. 300 units, awesome. You open the car door. Oh, aren't you considerate? You held her hand in public, at church, everywhere you go, 100 credits. You texted her lovey-dovey notes all day long, 50 credits. That's what it looks like, right? These are positive interactions you're having with your spouse-to-be, maybe. But then maybe in that same time period, we have some withdrawals. I mean, maybe not dramatic, but look. We forgot to call. You lost 10 credits. You mentioned your ex-girlfriend. Minus 20. Bad breath. Sorry, you had a lot of garlic for lunch. Didn't go well. You forgot your 1 month anniversary. Negative 30 credits. Insensitive comment. Negative 10 units. Okay, so you can see at the beginning of the relationship, look at all those positives. You've got these huge credits. You do, silly things sometimes, or you make those mistakes that we make. It takes little minor dings that happen to the relationship at that point. But what happens is these credits that you're making over here and those withdrawals you're making over here, eventually the honeymoon's over, right? You say, I do. You get married, and then life kind of gets in the way of those phone conversations at 2 a.m., right? It's like diapers at 2 a.m., feedings at 2 a.m., you've got rent, you've got house repairs, you've got work, you've got a million more responsibilities than making this person the absolute center of your life. So these withdrawals, they kind of become bad habits that we have with our spouse, and we might unintentionally be hurting our spouse. So this course is really good about breaking those bad habits and learning from our wives what hurt them, and likewise, they kind of learn what hurts us, and it just makes the relationship grow. Real quick, I want to talk about the 3 stages of marriage. And there are intimacy, there is conflict, and there is withdrawal. The phase that you're always looking for, that stage of your marriage you always want, is going to be the intimacy phase. And I think you're going to see why. Intimacy takes place when a marriage is categorized by 2 different things. Each meeting each other's needs. Do what makes them happy, right? That sounds simple. And each avoid causing unhappiness to the other. Avoid what makes them unhappy. So make them happy, avoid what makes them unhappy. If you can do this with your wife all the time, you're golden. Some of you are probably great at that. Conflict. Conflict takes place, and it's categorized by not meeting the other's needs, or one or both causing unhappiness in the other. This is going to come up from time to time, and that's normal. A little bit of conflict is going to happen every once in a while in a marriage, right? Raise your hand if you've ever had a conflict in your marriage. Married men? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to happen. That's normal. Having a little bit of conflict is healthy. Having a lot of conflict is not healthy. And in fact, you have too much conflict, that will lead to our third and the worst stage, and that's withdrawal. And we see that in relationships that are probably getting ready to fall apart. It's just you get that, who cares? It doesn't matter anymore. Why should I even bother? Why should I try? And you've kind of you see a pile of hearts on fire right there. That's what's happened, right? There's been too many withdrawals from that love bank. That relationship has just been blown up. To get a biblical sense, true biblical sense of what true intimacy should look like with our spouse, let's consider the example of the humility of Christ in Philippians 2, 1-4. So if there's any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and with one mind. Do nothing from rivalry or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look out not only for his interest, but also the interest of others. Think about this. If both partners in a marriage truly strive to live out verse 3 and count the other as more significant, the marriage really should have very little conflict, right? Likewise, think about how marriage would look if we followed Colossians 3:12-13. Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against the other, forgiving each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. Now, if we treat our spouse like that, that relationship is going to be pretty solid, isn't it? But here's the challenge. We weren't told to treat our spouses, just our spouses, like this. We were told to treat everybody like this. And that's another challenge in a completely different sermon, right? Imagine how many marital problems would just evaporate if we treated each other like the Bible says we're supposed to be treating everyone, right? How much more important is our spouse as far as our relationships are concerned? Now, here in my next slide, let's get back to the book, His Needs, Her Needs. And here's some of that secular wisdom that Dr. Harley noticed when he was counseling those couples. The 10 emotional needs that he identifies are affection, sexual fulfillment, intimate conversation, recreational companionship, honesty and openness, physical attractiveness, financial support, domestic support, family commitment, and admiration. Take a look at that list for just a second. Think about your top 3, your top 5 needs. You might know what they are right now. Like, that's definitely my need. I definitely need that. Now, think about your wife's need. What do you think your wife's top 5 needs are, top 3 needs are? If you know already, there's a really good chance you have a great marriage. Are you sure about what they are right now? Men and women generally tend to have very different needs when they prioritize them. This was one of the true breakthroughs that Dr. Harley discovered. Like, your 5 needs are probably very, very different from your spouse's 5 needs. If you're not meeting her top needs, then your marriage has room for growth. It's likely you and your spouse have 5 very different top needs. That's the power of this course. You figure out what each of your needs are and ways to work on and change the bad habits you may have developed in the course of your marriage and grow together. So here's some important takeaways we took away from the class, and this is more of a generalization as far as what I took away and what I heard other people take away. So I won't get too personal. They don't all apply to me, so just take it for what you will. It's just, general information. So some important takeaways we learned. Praying together each day is a habit you should start today. And that one is personal to me because I wasn't praying with my spouse like I should have before this class started. My spouse and I, my wife Megan and I, we pray every day together. I ask her what she wants to pray about. She asks me what's on my mind. It lets her know what's on my heart. I know what's on her heart, and we can see the power of prayer when it's answered. And I have a better relationship with my wife. So that is something you can take away today. Go home. If you're a married man, you go home and you pray with your spouse today before you go to bed. Intimate conversation is important. It's very important. It's a lot more important than we give it credit for. Now, I know Michael was talking about how we need to be listening to our spouse, about that listening, and that's what you need to avoid the phone. You need to turn off the TV. You need to make eye contact. It needs to be more than, She knows you're not listening. She knows it. Okay, you have to ask relevant follow-up questions, make eye contact, add feedback when necessary. That's really listening, right? It turns out you need, great marriages, when they surveyed them and looked at them, you need about 15 hours a week of intimate conversation. That's a lot of conversation, okay? Which means, you're not getting your 15 hours if you're not listening. She might be doing 15 hours of talking, but you got to do 15 hours of listening too, if that's where we're going. Now, ideally, you should be doing 7 hours, 7.5, and she should be doing 7.5, right? Is it going to work that way? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how much you talk and how much he talks, right? Intimate conversation is really important. Affection and sex are 2 different things. According to Dr. Harley, many men overlook the importance of consistently showing their wife affection. Affection sends the message, I care about you, you're important to me, and I don't want anything to happen to you. I'm concerned about the problems you face, and I'll try to help you overcome them. You can say these things in a hug. According to Dr. Harley, for the typical wife, there can hardly be enough of them. Affection, though, doesn't always have to be physical. It might be a kind word. It might be a note. It might be flowers. It might be a small gift. It might just be something that you listened, like, hey, would you mind running a little laundry when you get home or something like that? That's how, sometimes you can show your affection, right? It just depends on what your wife considers affection, right? It might require little more than just holding her hand and hugging. But the average husband, in general, in this book, is not showing their wife enough affection. Don't confuse affection and sex. However, giving your spouse affection that she needs in the relationship may improve the sexual component as well. Be your spouse's best source of companionship. And this goes back to the listening idea. If you have a hobby and it's never with your wife, you need a new hobby. Your wife should be your favorite companion. If she has her own hobby and you have your own hobby, you need to find a new hobby that you enjoy together, because you need 15 hours of conversation every week. And that might mean I don't get to spend 14 hours a week on the bass boat. That might mean bowling with the boys doesn't happen every Tuesday night. There might be some sacrifices that you have to make for that, but your spouse is worth it. Find something you guys can do together that you both enjoy. You will both be happy about it later. Also, be radically honest with your wife. Radically honest means your wife knows your passcode, your wife knows everything that's going on during your day, your wife knows why you're 10 minutes late from work, all those things. She knows you're going to be late. She knows you're going to be late ahead of time because you told her, because that's how well you're communicating with her. Radical honesty requires a different level in some people's marriages. You might already have that. Your wife should know about your present, your past, your present, and your future. So don't hide things from her. Don't hide things that happened in the past. Don't hide things that are going to happen in the future. Don't hide things that are happening right now. Stay physically attractive for her. I'm talking to men, so I'm putting this out there. You have a little bit of responsibility here too. When you met your wife, when you were having those calls to 2 a.m., I bet you before you went on a date, you made sure your hair looked good, right? You smelled good. You changed shirts 3 times to make sure you were happy with it. Right? There was a time when you did this, right? How many of you have been married for 10 years, 15 years, and you still do that exactly? I'm waiting. Okay, you have an obligation to be the man that she married, right? We didn't just trick her and then just let ourselves go. Okay, there's a little bit of responsibility on your part too when it comes to that physical attractive component too. So taking the dynamic marriage course, and I can see by my signals here that we're going to wind up just about on time, which is perfect. I want you to either go to a dynamic marriage course and take it, or I'd like you to start one at your congregation. You can check it out at marriagedynamics.com, and you can see more about what they offer and more about what I'm talking about. But really, I need you to become a facilitator. The last time I looked for courses in this region, there were none. When I looked a few months ago, there were some. So it just kind of depends. And people don't want to have to drive because of the 8-week component. People probably don't want to drive 90 minutes to get to marriage class on whatever night of the week that is. We need you. This is something you can show Christ to the world. You can show Christ to your family. You can show Christ to your community. It's a great way to invite people. Now, a word of warning. This is not for marriages that might be in trouble. If you hear a coworker complain about their spouse all the time and they seem like they're in crisis, they are not a good match for this course. Again, you're not a licensed therapist, most likely, right? A licensed counselor. So you want people that have a good marriage, but really want a great marriage. That's who you're looking for this particular course. This is a worthy ministry for your congregation. But the last part, and I'm going to end right here. If you know someone whose marriage is in trouble, they're in that conflict, it seems like they've been in conflict for years, you see that they're in that withdrawal phase, somebody in that marriage just doesn't seem like they care anymore. And if you think they're about to end it, send them to SaveMyMarriage.com. Marriage Dynamic Institute has an intensive training called an intensive course led by professionals. They're all licensed and very professional. They have a success rate of about 75%. If you can agree to get that couple to go to, usually it's around Nashville or somewhere in the local area, if you can get them there for the weekend, it's called A New Beginning. People that have even had things like affairs and other things in their marriage have gotten back together, and they've fallen in love again. And so marriage is so important that I'd like you to consider this. If you want to know more about it, come find me today. I'd be happy to talk with you about it. But I appreciate your attention, and God bless.